Let's get started, and let me welcome everybody. Welcome all the folks here at the Legion. Welcome to folks on Facebook and Zoom. I'm sure the crowd will gather. And let me just share part of the presentation. We've done that. And welcome Lindsay Agnes, who's going to be talking to us about steelheading today. As we get started, let me just remind you folks that our club plans to keep hybrid through at least this year. And this is working so well, I'd be surprised if we would change that plan in the future. If all the meetings, the program meetings, will be here at the Corning American Legion. You can join us through Zoom or Facebook Live. So it's totally your pick how you want to join us. And this gives plenty of options. If you are joining us on Zoom, we would ask that you keep your mics muted. You do have your choice of how you watch things, but it will look the best if you set it up on speaker or side-by-side view. We love to have your questions and interactions, but please don't interrupt or take us off topic. And you're welcome to ask the questions through chat or to take your mic off and mute and ask them directly. We can hear you here in the facility, so no worries, we can hear you. If you're on Facebook Live, please share comments or say hi to the folks that are there. Feel free to do that through the Facebook comments. Bob Carlson is keeping an eye on Facebook, and he'll pass those questions or comments along at the right time. So, without further ado, let me introduce Lindsay Agnes, and I'm going to do the formal introduction a little bit later. So Lindsay's here to talk to us about steelhead, and she's going to start us out with one of our favorite steelhead flies. Okay. So.
Hey, everybody, how are you doing?
Hey, good.
Well, Lady Hope. This was a fly that I tied about 6-7 years ago. And it was a fly that I tied for the women casting for recovery. These are ladies recovering from breast cancer. And I was at a fly tying event. And before I left the room, I ran to the event. I threw a bunch of pink things into my fly box and ran out. And I had my vise and I got to the tying event. And I decided to create a fly. And so what I'm tying today is Lady Hope, and it's a beautiful pink steelhead fly. And the recipe is on a obviously black thread, size 6, on a Daiichi 4 streamer hook, and we've got like a blue purple tinsel, and we've got red tinsel. I've got some pink coyote material. I've got some pearl flash that goes into this. And then this beautiful pink hackle, a barred hackle cape. And then to tie it off at the very end, I have some black schlappen feathers that are really nice. So the story about this fly was I was at a fly tying event. I just decided to tie a pink fly for the ladies. We tied a bunch off and they were given to casting for recovery. So I had this in my box and I had tied it. So then fast forward, I decided to go steelhead fishing. And I had him in my box. For those of you, he's got close up. So those of you, my fly box here, those of you live, I had some Lady Hopes. And as you can see in the presentation that they showed, you'll see that a beautiful steelhead with a Lady Hope in her mouth. So it turned out that this fly was so good and so hot that I would follow other men fishing. They'd fish down a run and I'd fish behind them and I'd have a Lady Hope on and bang, I would hook up with a steelhead. So Dave, my husband's like, what is that fly? What have you got? And I said, well, there's this fly that I have that I tied and it became more popular. I caught a king salmon on it. And I decided, I went on Facebook and I decided to have a naming contest for it. And I had, about 60 people try to name the fly. I said, what should we call this? And a gentleman in New Zealand ended up he put down, name it Lady Hope. And the prize was I would send 6 of these to whoever named it, right? And I had to send half a dozen Lady Hopes to New Zealand because he named it Lady Hope and it was wonderful. So that's the story. So now I'll get into fly tying. So first of all, we're going to start with the tinsel. And for those of you, that don't know how to tie, I really encourage you to get into it. It's very relaxing. My husband fly tying all the time. The back end here, we're going to start with, I think I have red. I have the blue on the back and then red. So this is like a tinsel material. Makes a beautiful flashy color underneath the hook. So I'm going to start about midway down and tie in my tinsel. And again, we're just going to wrap this down and back nice and tight. I find fly tying very relaxing. Dave and I, when my daughter moved out of the house, we have 4 daughters together. And when she moved out, we turned one of her bedrooms into a fly shop. So we have his and her vise in there. We've got the TV. We've got even a fly locker. So again, I'm just tying this down and back, nice even wraps. I mean, this is for fishing. It's not for beauty. So again, we're back to where we started, right in the center. And again, I'm going to go and lock that fly down, that material down, okay? And we always cut on the top. Okay, and then now we're going to do the same thing. We're going to wrap forward with the red tinsel. So here we go. Cut a little piece of red tinsel and tie it in. And I'm just going to move my thread to the top. Yeah, so when I first started fly fishing, I've been fishing all my life, and I did not tie flies initially. I thought it was like too much. I was like, oh my gosh. So when I got into fly fishing, I really enjoyed. I got to go back again, talking and wrapping at the same time. So Dave, my husband, what was so nice about it was Dave would we'd go fishing. He'd hand me a fly box full of flies already tied. And what happened is after I got into fly fishing, I started getting better and better. I'm like, well, honey, my box is missing, a hare's ear, or my fly box is missing, a black bear, green butt skunk or whatever. And he was like, okay, I'll tie that up for you. Well, then after a while, he's like, you got to help on this tying stuff. We got to, I can't be tying these things for you. So with that, I got into fly tying. And then today, Dave and I tie pretty much all our flies. I really enjoy it. Okay, so what I did is I tied that tinsel down and back. So what I normally do now is I coat this. I actually brought another hook, but again, you can use head cement. Again, we lock this down with just coat that real nice, makes it nice and shiny with a nice gloss. Everybody does their different things. You can use head cement, gloss, nail polish, whatever you got around the house. And then you let this dry. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to switch over because I have one dry already. So this helps us go quicker. Aha. Just like magic, that's dry now. I tied this up earlier before I left the house. So, okay, so now we've got our hook and we've got our flash on there. The next thing we're going to do is actually tie in the pink coyote. The tinsel is all done. So we're going to get the pink coyote in there. Just going to adjust my fly a little bit. Okay, and this material is pretty dense and it does float quite a bit. So a lot of times I'll fish this fly with weight or with a sink tip. We do have it late here, yay. So this pink coyote is pretty porous. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to strip off some of the fuzzy part. I clean it off. Just going to work through some of this material. I really just clean it, trying to get some of the materials out of it, and it out a little bit. And I turned my hook upside down. We're going to start with the bottom first. So again, we're going to start with a wrap. Again, you want to leave a little room for the head here. I'm going to tie in the bottom. Again, and just like those fibers, all nice and fluffed up. Okay, we measure it out. Again, I'm tying, you know, I guess a couple inches. You want a lot of movement. I notice sometimes I have some in my box that are thicker than others. You know, when it's darker, dirtier water, you may want sort of a thicker fly. And then when it's clearer water, you can go with more of a thinner or lighter, lightly sparsed fly. And I'm just going to cut off I wrap that. I'm just going to cut off the top. Again, we're just going to cut off this pink coyote. Take a look at this. You could add more depending on the thickness. Like I said, this I wrapped quite a bit in here. So let me put a little bit more on there. I think that looks pretty good for now. Spit, you know, play with your fibers, right? You guys all do that, right? Spit always works. Okay, I kind of like that actually. There was a lot in there and it kind of rolled a little, so it wrapped itself around. Okay, so the next thing we're going to do is we're going to tie in some flash. This is a, you know, pearl flash that we use for saltwater flies. If you guys ever go bone fishing or tie bonefish flies, this is kind of the bonefish flash. And again, really pretty stuff. Really lights up nice. So we're going to tie 2 strands. I've got 2 strands together. We're going to tie in on 2 strands on either side. Okay, we got to make sure we're straight on our fly. Okay, we're going to tie 2 strands here. Yeah. So this little beauty is really done well with, you know, if you're going to do pink and black for steelhead fishing, this is really a beautiful fly, and it turns out to be very successful. Who knew, right? It was one of those beautiful things that ever happened. Okay, so we got our flash tied in on the side, a couple strands on either side. The next thing we're going to do is this barred hackle. Again, real pretty pink, bright pink barred hackle. Got a nice cape here. Dave and I go down to the fly fishing shows a lot, and we, I don't know, who's the guy that we talk to? We get some hackles down there a lot of times. You know, we go to this, back in the day it was Somerset, and now it's Edison, but we go get some of our hackle capes there. Okay, so when I'm measuring this out, I like the hackle to go a little bit out beyond the fly. So I'm measuring up my hackle. I'm going to strip off the feathers so we can line it up nice. Doesn't have to be perfect. But I do like the movement of this hackle. So it's great, a tractor pattern for the steelhead. I'm going to put in the hackle on the other side. tie it down. Beautiful. It's coming along nice. Maybe a little long, but that's okay. And then the last part is this black schlappen feather. What I do is I like to tie that up around the nose of the fly. Gives it like a front cone. Gives it a contrast between the pink and the black. So again, for those of you that like to play with your feathers, I do. You can find the perfect one. Oh, did I pack my hackle pliers? I did. Okay, we can, around the world we go here. I'm going to tie my thread all the way to the nose, and then we're going to get a nice, we're just going to wrap forward on this.
Lindsay, you said that you want the perfect feather, but what makes it a perfect feather for this?
Nice, clean, no fuzz. You know, you want it something. It's all about the length too.
Okay.
See, I don't want anything too short. I want longer, right? Longer is better, right? So again, I don't want it to be you know, this is a pretty good size fly. So I'm looking for a really long hackle.
Is that because you want it to move?
Yeah, so if you look at this, we're gonna it's kind of a tractor. So yeah, so what we're gonna do as part of this, let me just cut that a little bit closer. Again, you're really trying to create a front on this. Okay, and I push it down. I'm gonna work this a little bit. Build up, we can build this up. Nice nose. And again, you want to just build a nice nose on this. Yeah, see the length? You want them long enough so that they lay back and that it's not too short on that. So again, real pretty. Doesn't have to be anything fancy because this is for steelhead fishing. It's not like it's a beautiful dry fly. I just do some half hitches and then put some head cement on that. And there we go. There's our Lady Hope. And this is in a tribute to all the ladies out there, breast cancer survivors that have moms or sisters or even men can have breast cancer. And this fly is really a tribute to them and their hope. So here's Lady Hope. Yeah. So that's Miss Lady Hope. You can tie them in different thicknesses. Like I said, you know, if it's a clear water, more in April timeframe, I might have, depending on the water, if I'm up on the Salmon River and it's a little bit clearer, I'll tie a little less, less pink coyote. And if I'm in, something where it's darker, murkier, heavier water, I definitely need something to get more attention to the steelhead. So you want it larger, bigger, flashier, type of thing. So I can buff it up a little bit more and tie it bigger. But yeah, so that's the Lady Hope. And it's been really a successful fly for me and steelhead fishing. So, and it serves two purposes because it's precious for the Casting for Recovery ladies. I'm a fly fishing instructor for Casting for Recovery here in upstate New York. I'm one of the fly fishing instructors, and I always try to encourage to have the pink flies for the ladies because of breast cancer. And sure enough, it's like I said, it's a fantastic steelhead fly. Okay. I do. I actually have done black and blue. I've done black and purple. I have done it in other colors. Yes. No, I played around with it. I'm generally the black. Yeah. And then I do black and purple or black and blues, or a lot of times are good. Mm-hmm.
Where does that come from?
I don't know. Is it a type of bird? What's a schlappen? It's a hen. Yeah, but what you can see the fibers, how long these are, see how long we were talking about these fibers, see how wide they are. You know, they're very wide.
The tail of the saddle, so the way in towards the bird's back.
There you go.
Sounded like a German word.
Schlappen. I got German. I had to put the Schlappen in there, the German accent in there. My grandparents are off the boat from Germany, and I'm German. So yes, I spreche ein wenig Deutsch. So I do, when I say Schlappen, I use the German version of that. But anyways, those are a lot of fun to tie, and I enjoy fly tying. And I have my box here. I mean, it's not something that you can probably see on the camera, but I do have some flies here that I fish with. I have some egg patterns and some other things that we'll be talking about more when we get to the event. What other questions? It's good to see we got a couple ladies here in the room. And who do we have on the Facebook Live?
We've got 12 on Facebook Live. Can't tell how many ladies. You can't tell what gender.
Okay. Well,
But
we're
definitely a
just,
couple ladies on Zoom. So, and there's probably
we're all
10.
anglers here.
That's right.
Perfect. Okay, so there you go. There's the Lady Hope.
All right.
Okay.
We're going to do a technical transition here.
You want this down?
All right. Thanks, Lindsay, for tying. I think we now have about 13 folks in the room here, and we'll see if we grow any further. The Facebook Live and Zoom audience is growing. I don't know if they're intending to miss the club announcements. Maybe that's it. Let's see. Let's share. I just want to share a few announcements about the club. And at the beginning of this year, the board of directors sat down, and one of the goals we set for this year is to COVID-proof our club. And what we meant by that was that we don't want to be besieged by this pandemic. So we searched for ways that we can keep doing what we do in the midst of the pandemic. So one of the things that we'll be doing is all our program meetings are hybrid. And in case of emergency, some crazy Omicron, whatever next, or in case of a winter storm or whatever, this gives us the option to go virtual only, which we did last month. And we'll be communicating that through our normal channels, Facebook page and MailChimp. Just a quick reminder that it's always good to clarify our social media outreach has 3 forms. The first important is the Facebook page, which is to the far, to my facing there, the left. And our Facebook page is where all the live streams originate. These are where all the club announcements and events are coming up or announced. The Facebook group is to facilitate dialogue, showing fish pictures, showing fly tying pictures, etc. And lastly, we have a YouTube channel where you can find recordings of all our programs and fly tying events. And so if you happen to not be able to catch this live, or if you really want to go back and get Lindsay's recipe, a recording of this will be kept and it's on YouTube and also on our Facebook page. So if you happen to be a slow note taker like I am, that's a real godsend. Okay, whoop, something happened. Okay. I want to mention that we have our fundraiser is in full gear right now. We have 1 week to go. We have 1 week to go. And if you have not checked out our fundraiser, you really need, you got to do it this week. There's excellent gear. There's actually 2 rods that are lined that are on there, and those are good rods. And we have lots of good gear. If you're new into fly tying, there's several kits. If you're not wanting to fly tag, there's a whole batch of flies, lots and lots of good gear. Help support the programs, participate, bid. And if you're one of those guys, people that, hey, I don't want any stuff, there's a button there to donate. And that's what it's for. And believe it or not, last year, I think we had $400 or $500 come in on donations. So thank you all for your generosity. It's really important to the club. And check it out. There's a lot of fun stuff there. 1 week to go. And I believe, Bob, that the auction 32 Ls have been in there recently and have reduced some prices.
Yes, and all the prices are as low as they're gonna go, so bid early, bid often, good luck.
Okay, so all the prices are as low as they're gonna go. So it's time to get it in gear. Okay, I want to remind folks that the speakers that Bob Carlson has lined up are beginning to take shape for the spring, and we've got some really good ones. So in March, Jesse Hollenbeck, who is the former president of the Seth Green TU chapter. He is a fly fishing guide, and he's going to be here talking about Awaka and Spring Creeks. If you're not familiar with them, make it a point to come. In April, if you have not heard of Sun Tao and you're on social media, I don't know where you've been. He is an amazing fly tyer, and he has some incredible videos. He is active military.
Wow.
Okay. And over his tenure of being active on social media, he's been deployed. And he is an amazing fly fisher. Sun Tao will be joining us. He'll be remoting in from North Carolina, South Carolina, where he is on assignment now. And I'm just really thrilled that he's going to be one of our speakers.
Mhm.
And Bob is in the process of working through our featured speaker in the club. It's always been in May. And Bob said I wasn't allowed to tell you who we're talking to, but is one of the top names in fly fishing. So watch for the announcements on May. There's some really cool names under consideration. Okay. In the club, we're just in an amazing active time right now. And we have 2 fly tying efforts that are underway. One is the beginner fly tying lessons. Those started in January, continue through February. We have 9 students who are learning how to tie flies virtually. And on our very first class, it doesn't show real well in here, but we're learning how to start and stop and attach materials. And so the teacher, that would be me, came up with this weird fly we call the Rogaine Fly, and we had a competition. And what you're looking at is the Rogaine Fly that won the competition, and the awardee is actually here tonight, and we're going to award Matt with his the court's only so long. Congratulations.
Thank you.
Yeah. Open that up and show them the cool fly box. It's really cool. Yeah. So. Cool. We also have beginner flight or master fly tying demonstration sessions. Those are open to club members. We're limiting out to 20. There was an email that just sent out that the February tire is Bob Carlson. Bob is going to be divulging all his secret patterns at this demonstration. So all the great nymphs that Bob ties that he's never told anybody about, he's gonna divulge those all on the 17th. And then in March, Mike Linetsky is going to be sharing some flies. Okay. We are in the process of announcing our fly fishing school, annual fly fishing school is back. It's going to be on Saturday, April 30th, rain or shine at Bill Wirtz's Lake. You heard that right. We're actually going to be doing the class where we can catch fish for the first time ever. And we've been waiting for this opportunity for a long time. However, because the lake and the facility isn't so big, we're limiting out to 15 students for the first time through. And Bill, how many do we have registered now?
7.
So we're half full. So if you're thinking about going to this class and you want to get your reservation in, we don't want you to be disappointed. We're really excited, but don't wait, because I expect this is going to fill soon. Okay, I think this is my last update. We are in the process of announcing that the council, that is the FFI in New York and New Jersey is our council, is sponsoring a virtual event, and that will be on March 22nd. It will be through Zoom, just like our club meeting is, and it will be through Facebook Live. So you can watch or participate through our Facebook page, through the Eastern Waters Facebook page, or you can hook right into the Zoom, okay? That post is up. You should have gotten an email. There's an announcement on our Facebook page itself. If you respond to that announcement and say you're going, you'll get alerted when the live stream starts. So if you're on Facebook, you'll get an alert and it'll say, hey, the George Daniel event's underway. Oh, I do have another. This is in the early stages, but it's we'd like to for those folks that have youth, we are doing the youth mentoring event again this year. It will be July the 12th. It's an evening event. Does anybody want to talk from that planning committee on this? Or should I just keep going? Keep going. Okay. The idea of this is to have a fun evening to get kids exposed to fly fishing, catching fish, and having fun. There'll be help available on casting. The kids will be able to tie their own fly and catch fish with it, but it isn't like filled with educational classes and such like the academy is. This is all about just catching fish and having fun, okay? The hope is that this is a mentoring experience. What do I mean by that? Is I want everybody who's a member especially to be thinking about a youth in your life that you would like to introduce fly fishing to. Okay, this may be somebody in your family. That may be the kid next door. somebody at your church, somebody in your life somehow that you think could connect to life better through fly fishing. We'd like you to consider that and to ask that youth to attend with you. The idea is that, let me call it a first date for getting and seeing if that kid kind of connects. But our hope is that that will lead to continuing outings, okay? That's our hope. Now, that's our hope for this event, and I hope that everybody will consider somebody in their life they could introduce our sport to. And I want to encourage that early, so you can be thinking about that. And if people want to reserve a spot, is it too early? Team? No, so we can, we'll take reservation. So if you're like, sure you want to go, there's only going to be 15 spots, right? 15 or 20, I've forgotten. 15. There's 15 spots decided right now. And so please get in early. And I'd really hope everybody would consider sharing our sport with the younger generation. Okay, Pam. I'd like to turn this over to Pam Walker, who is our Women Connects representative. You have to
Thank you.
stand
At the
there
spot?
for the camera to.
I'm on the spot. Okay. You may, probably everybody here is aware that we had our inaugural Women Connect event last year at Bill Wirtz's lovely property. We had about 20 women enjoying a day of fellowships that work for women, I guess so, and fly fishing. That was our time to connect and learn with one another. And quite a few of the people who were there were absolute beginners. And we had a great time, as you can see from the photos. We had such a great time that we decided to build on that. We can go to the next slide. There, yeah. And say, okay, now that we've all gotten a taste of what this is about and we've decided we really enjoy doing this, what would we really like to do? And the answer was, go get some wild trout. And we thought Pine Creek offered a great opportunity for that. So this year we are sponsoring a small overnight trip. We're going to limit it to 6 participants per day, but you can come for one or both days. And we're going to go to Pine Creek, Pennsylvania with expert guide Julie Zur, who tells us we're going to have a wonderful time. We're going to be in the Slate Run area and working on some of the skills that we can't do in a pond, like reading water and strategies for fish and moving water. Julie's going to teach us about entomology as well while we're there. And so we're really looking forward to a great time. We're still putting some of the final details on this trip, so we don't have all of those to release at this point, but as soon as I have them, and I'm hoping that's any day now, I will get information out to the membership of the club so that people can start signing up and sending in their deposits. We think it's going to be a great time. But because we had so much fun at Bill's property last year, we have one more slide, TC. We're going to have our 2nd annual meet, greet, and fly fish at the Wirtz property, and that's going to be later in the year on Saturday, July 9th. So this is going to be widely advertised. We had people last year coming from as far away as Wappingers Falls and Buffalo and even the New York City area. So we're looking for a repeat of that and a great time and building on the women's activities in the club. So thanks for the opportunity to tell you about this tonight.
I stole your clicker. Sorry about that. All right, we have 2 introductory slides, so I'll use this one. Huh?
Yeah, because that's got the Lady Hope in it. See the lady?
Oh.
I just wanted to
But
show
wait,
you.
We gotta go back. That is an amazing.
That's a nice brown. Yeah.
Yeah.
Sandy. That's on Sandy.
Yeah, that's Sandy one,
Mhm.
and then, yeah. So, but we're talking steelhead, so we got
I
to
put
do this.
and I put my fly there. It works.
All right. So this is my chance to officially introduce Lindsay Agnes. there's a lot of stuff to talk about in fly fishing. So Lindsay fishes a lot with her husband Dave, who was here tonight. They're steelhead and bass fanatics, but you can find them looking for fish in the saltwater as far away as the Seychelles.
Yeah.
So they are fly fishing fanatics. And so suffice it to say that Lindsay is the first woman fly fisher to speak to this club. And as we were thinking about how we could do more to encourage women to fly fish, the Women Connects group, Women Connect, I have a hard time with that, said, let's have a speaker. And they said, but we want somebody who is coming with expertise. And so they actually use the term badass fly fisher.
Well, that would be
Yeah.
Rachel Finn, just so you know, but
Yeah.
I don't know if you know Rachel. She's the badass, but
Well, that did occur to me as well.
Yeah.
So Lindsay has agreed to talk, and I think you're going to understand better why we picked Lindsay. Let's see. So Lindsay has, not only will you find her fishing, but you will find her sharing our sport. She's already talked about her work with Casting for Recovery. She does a lot of work with a nonprofit group called Oasis, and with military veterans as well. It just so happens that I learned to spay cast from Lindsay at a presentation and class that Lindsay and Dave gave at the Fly Fishers Workshop up in Rochester, probably 5-6 years ago. So good. Lindsay also is the coordinator for the women's program for TU statewide. And so I'm on the council for FFI, and TU and FFI are doing a lot to work together to encourage women in our sport. And so we've had a chance to interface, and I'm looking forward to more work together in this exciting area of growth in fly fishing. So without further ado, let me introduce Lindsay Agnes.
all right. Thank you. Just going to make sure I'm in here. Thank you, Kirk. I really appreciate it. And thanks, everybody. It's great to see you. It was worth the drive. I love speaking about steelhead fishing and fly fishing. So this is for you tonight. So if you have questions, feel free to stop and ask. I guess maybe not. You have to go to chat. But what we'll do is I'm going to talk about steelhead fishing first. I'm going to go through some of the techniques of steelhead fishing as you get into it. And then I want to talk at the end of my presentation. I'm going to talk a little bit about the history of fly fishing from a women's perspective here in New York State. There is a lot of history for women. We've got Joan Wolf and other ladies down in the Catskills and things. So I want to talk about that. I enjoy kind of going back into time. I was on the board for the Catskill Fly Fishing Museum for a couple of years, and I got to serve on that board side by side with Joan, which was just a treat in itself. So I can speak a little bit to my experience there and what's going on. So let's get fly fishing. So anyways, I wanted to show you a picture. I didn't just tie this fluffy pink fly and I tell you it's a steelhead fly. That was no change to the fly. That's a picture of a big, beautiful steelhead with a lady hope in its mouth. So I wanted to show you that it definitely works, and that steelhead definitely was excited about it, and that's how it goes around the Agness household. So let's talk about steelhead fishing and their migratory rainbows. Our steelhead run in and out of Lake Ontario. That's our big really our big watershed. And they're a spring run Washington Chambers Creek steelhead. Again, if we get into strains of steelhead, they stage out in the lake, in Lake Ontario and Lake Erie. And in around August, you'll see them out in front of a lot of the rivers and that run into off of Lake Ontario. They'll start staging out there. And September timeframe, again, you'll have to look at water flows. They'll actually start to come into the river. Based on my experience, the little jacks, the smaller ones, come in sometimes early. They're early on. The main thing is they stay in our rivers through April, or really till the water conditions get warm enough that they would then head back out to the lake. So steelhead are in the rivers from anywhere from as early as September all the way through April. So they're definitely there. You can access them, and I'm going to talk a little bit about how to be more productive and get that. Steelhead love to follow the king salmon and coho salmon runs. When they migrate in, they kind of like me too, and they follow them in. They like the eggs. They like the spawning eggs rolling down the stream. So they're really, a lot of times when there's a push of fish, the steelhead will start to come in with them. And then they'll stay there. You know, that's a trigger. The other thing is water flow. If there's a big push of water, that will also, the smell of the silt from the river will flush out into Lake Ontario or Lake Erie, and they smell it, and that attracts them to come in. So pushes of water are pretty, attractive. And then they're natural egg eaters. Steelhead, they love eggs. So as there's lots of salmon eggs and lots of coho and king salmon eggs, they're gonna smell that, and it'll get them to come in and start running into the water. So generally, they're a river fish. Like I said, they spend most of their time, even up to 8 months in our rivers here in Lake Ontario, September through May. Okay, so here's I thought I'd do a map of upstate New York there in Lake Ontario, and some of you may even be close enough to run over to Lake Erie. But I wanted to give you a list of all the rivers that you could fish off of for steelhead. I mean, these are all available. You can get the DEC public fishing maps are online. They're available. Oops, sorry, let me just hear from the DEC. And you can look at fishing access points, where to park, things like that. I mean, what I would do is, you start to pick up some of these rivers, start to learn them. You could even go for a drive, even during the summer, and just check them out, understand where the fishing, parking, things like that are. But there's quite a lot of rivers. Some have more access than others, and some have more people than others. But again, I wanted to just show you all of these here really run across the lake, the southern part of the lake, and they run all these different streams. So these are all opportunities to steelhead fish. What do you need from equipment perspective? Steelhead range from anywhere from 3 pounds to 20 pounds. So you're going to be using really a 7 weight, 8 weight rod. Maybe Kirk is going to go use a 2 weight rod, but you want a rod that's got some stiffness to it, that you can cast. About 9 to 11 feet long. You want a larger arbor reel if possible, because these steelhead run, and you've got to reel them back in. And the smaller the arbor, the more you've got to reel. So you want to be able to hold line and reel in quickly and make your reeling in more productive. So we use like a weight forward floating line for beginners. If you're new to casting, you're going to maybe even have some weight or some sink tips on that. If you're new to casting and your casting isn't maybe as effective as it should be, I would recommend that you overweight your fly line by 1 weight. So for instance, if you have a 7 weight rod, you're new to fly fishing, I would put an 8 weight line on it for steelhead fishing. Definitely would get your cast out there. It's not so much like a quiet presentation. Steelhead are not shy, line shy and leader shy. So I would, for new people, I would overline your rod a little bit because you've got wind, you've got weight, you've got indicators and other things. So that just makes it a little bit easier, especially the ladies that are new. Some other things you need if you want to do indicator fishing, I bring some. Sometimes I switch off between nymphing, indicator fishing, or swinging flies. So, you never know. You get out there and you got to figure out what do they want, and you can try your favorite method. But then if you want to catch a fish, you may have to change your style and your technique. So I bring some indicators. I usually have some shot in my pack, and I bring a variety of sink tips in different lengths. I have my tips over here, and I can show some of the folks what they are. But they're a sinking leader that you can tie on or put on your line, and it instead of a monofilament leader, it allows you to sink your fly down. You can have weighted flies, but you can also have weighted leader type of sink tip. You need a large landing net. I don't know how many times I go in the river and I see somebody with a net on their back, and it's just this little trout net, and I just like laugh because they get out of the car and you're getting your waders on, and some guy comes walking by and he's got this tiny trout net, and it's not like you're going to Pine Creek. Okay, this is steelhead. They're big, so you need a good sized net. And that's helpful for you to get the fish in, get it to the shore. If you do want a photo opportunity, it gives you an opportunity to leave the fish in the net in the water while you get yourself all ready, and then you can with a friend's help, somebody can maybe take your picture while you relift your fish. So you want waterproof pack and tackle. I know I wade in sometimes, and because I'm short, my pack does get wet. So again, good thing to have a waterproof pack. Plus, if you're out in the rain, you got your raincoat and things, it's good to, steelhead fishing. I like my pack waterproof. My leaders, I'm doing 10 or 12 pound, and my tippet, I'm doing generally 8 to 10 pound tippet on the end. I truly recommend that we have studded boots or with felt. A lot of the rivers on the Lake Ontario tributaries have a lot of moss. They're very slippery. And one of the things for safety is you need a wading staff, and you definitely need felt with studs. If you have rubber bottom boots with cleats, okay, still slippery, but you'll do all right. Or you can use corkers that attach to your boot. Okay, so let's talk about the very first technique. And those of you that like to do nymphing and nymph fishing, one of the first ways to catch fish is really with nymphing, and you can, the steelhead love eggs. They like them as they're rolling down the stream. You want to be able to present a nymph on the stream, and you also want it to be effectively swinging through and not dragging along the bottom. So typically a nymph rig, I'll show you a picture of a nymph rig here. It's a standard mono leader with your rod, and it's about the length of your rod for the mono leader, and the tippet's about 3 feet on the end with your flies attached. At the junction point between your leader and your tippet, a lot of times we place a swivel in there. You can do a knot, and we can do some split shot on that. We recommend either blood knot or the swivel. And one of the things here is the most important is to make sure that the shot is not dragging on the bottom, that the fly is coming in the fish's zone for it to see. So here's an example on the left-hand side. I just tried to find something. Joe Humphreys had a good example. You have one shot on the line, and you can see the fly is up kind of higher in the water column, and 2 to 3 shots, it's a little lower. And then you can see the 4 shot are really heavy. It's dragging the bottom, and that is, you don't want to be dragging. So you've got to work with your weight as you're looking at the flow and the hydraulics. You want to make sure you're fishing effectively and your fly is up into the cone, the zone of the fish. So here's an example of the typical nymph setup.
More about
So if I'm not familiar with it, why don't you want that flag dragging on the bottom?
You don't want, so the steelhead are going to be laying, depending on water temperature, they're going to be laying, as it gets colder to the bottom. You're going to want them, depending if it's very cold, you're going to want the fly kind of coming right at them in their vision cone. Or above, if it's warmer, they may be looking up or higher in the water column. So dragging on the bottom, they're not looking down, they're not going to go down for it. And what you'll notice if you're catching fish and you're catching them underneath, if you're catching them in the chin, you're catching them in the belly, you're using way too much weight. And so I see people hooking, oh, I got one on, and it's underneath, or it's on its chin or whatever. So you've got to effectively think like a fish. Where is the water? Where is the fish going to be in this water column? Like I said, warmer temperatures, they can be higher. Sometimes you can even see steelhead rolling in the sunny afternoon. On very cold days, it can get warm up and you'll see them roll on the surface even. So you wouldn't want to be fishing down farther if you're seeing fish rolling towards the top. So this is a typical setup that we use. You have a fly line with your leader onto your fly line. We have a tag end here. So we have a swivel. We tie a tag end hanging off the top end of the swivel, and we put a couple shot on there. It could be one or two or none. And then on the other end of the swivel, you're tying your 3 feet of tippet. This would be, this is your 10-pound or 8-pound tippet. And then you tie your fly on. So this would be a typical rig with your hang down tag end with your shot on that. And if you do break off, a lot of times it'll break here, and then you just have to retie the bottom end of your line. So that's how Dave and I, that's how we rig up our nymphing. So let's talk about how to fish this effectively. Let's see. Oh. Does that work? All right, see if we can get our presentation back.
Yeah,
Want me to stop it?
yeah, you want to,
Hang on 1 second. I don't know what happened here. We'll just start it back up.
cool, you got it, Lindsay.
Yeah.
Okay, perfect. Sorry about that. So proper presentation, again, you want to present that nymph in a very natural drift, like it's floating down the stream. You don't want it dragging the bottom. You don't want too much weight, like I said, or lose control. So a nymphing rig, you really want to feel that shot or that weight ticking down the stream. You want to kind of have it tick, tick, tick. If you feel tick, 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 it's too heavy. And if you're fishing and you don't feel it at all, it's not effectively even, your weight's not getting down to the bottom. So you want to look at the hydraulics. You want to make sure that your fly is getting down. Sometimes it's very quick in a stream or a pool. You throw your fly in, you mend your line, and you're swinging it down, and it's already down there to your, it's done. It happened. It swung through really quickly. And so you want to try to slow that down with weight, and even doing a couple mends and throwing a couple mends upstream. This is your upstream mend to get your flies a chance to sink. You can also use weighted flies. You can put bead heads and cones and things like that to get your fly down. So you want to make sure you're checking the river hydraulics and that you're getting your fly effectively down. You want to cast across and do some mends, and then you're going to fish. What I do is when I have a lot of slack, I kind of high stick it, and then as we come downstream, you can lower your rod tip. But you need to be conscious. I want you to look at the speed and the depth, the hydraulics, and making sure you're ticking on the bottom. So again, a lot of reasons people aren't effectively fishing for steelhead. They're fishing too high, or they're dragging the bottom. So you've got to look at your fly and make sure that you're getting it down there effectively. This, you usually fish in colder water, so you need to get lower in the water column. All right, why are we doing this?
I'm gonna try again. Sorry.
It's okay. I can actually, yeah, I don't know why it's not. Maybe I'll push the button on the here instead. Okay, let's talk about flies. So, and again, this would be for depending all the different ways that you fish. My security is running. Okay, so all the way on the left-hand side are egg patterns. You know, steelhead love eggs. They love, like I said, salmon eggs, brown trout eggs. They like sucker spawn. They like all kinds of eggs. And so on the the two pictures here on the left, these are egg patterns that you can tie. This is an Estes type of egg. These are more of a, you know, I don't know what that material is, the yarn type of eggs. Don't be afraid to fish things like this is, you know, a black bear greenbutt skunk. You know, this is a darker fly, red with green on it. Very effective. I've used that, you know, a lot of times for steelhead. They love, these are kind of nymphs that I tie. And you can see bead-headed or regular nymphs. Very good with stone flies, you know, especially in the, I think, really soon.
All
like
we see is
discovery.
Bob's name. We can't see the picture.
Okay, hang on a second.
I think that might be your setup, Dave, because I was seeing the picture. You gotta have it on presentation.
I don't see it either.
Well, I don't see it now, but I was seeing it when Dave was talking.
I still see Bob.
All this technology.
Do you see
You're
her
welcome.
now, Dave?
For a second until someone talked.
So for those in your room, this is like my typical steelhead box for my,
See her
Oh my
now.
God.
So
Yeah, you got her on. You got to mute and keep her on speaker mode. You got it up in the view. Click on speaker and stay on mute.
it's just like when I entertain, I don't sing, I'm not a singer, so. Yeah. This technology is tough.
Yeah, I think you can continue. I'm gonna go back on mute. They're probably seeing me now since I'm speaking, but I'm seeing you, so I think you're good.
Yeah. Can we do it again?
Yeah.
Show.
I'm gonna try to advance it and see, just to test it.
You want me to try to move forward?
Yeah.
you're good.
See if I can move back.
Mhm.
It's not letting me move back though. Okay, so anyways, I talked about, so we had egg patterns, we had, you know, nymphs, and then on the very far right, there were streamer flies, right? So these are flies that have a lot of movement, like the Lady Hope and other ones. These are to imitate bait fish or attractor patterns to stimulate an urge or instinct for a steelhead to strike. Okay, so those are used when we swing. So let's talk about indicator fishing. So again, we take a look at that nymphing situation, and we've effectively swung through a pool or a run, and we've walked through. A lot of times you cast, if there's no one around, it's beautiful. You can cast and step, do a few casts, swing through that area, nymph that, take a step down, again, move through the water. What you're going to find is steelhead fishing, if you're standing in the same place for an hour, 20 minutes in the day, you're not going to catch fish. Steelhead move, they hunt, they migrate. You have to move, hunt, and migrate yourself. So again, effective steelhead fishing isn't standing in one place. I mean, if you've been somewhere and fish can hold there, try it for 10, 15 minutes, try with a nymphing, try with an indicator, try swinging, and then move on. If they were there, they would bite. Okay, so sometimes they're there, but they're not going to play today. So you just got to move through. So one of the best things you can do is don't stick around in one spot and move through. So indicator fishing, after you finish nymphing, still didn't get a bite, what you can try is putting one of the indicators on. This is a float, or for those new to fly fishing, a bobber or whatever, you can put this on. You can set this again on where your tippet comes into your leader. You want to set that above that, either that knot or the swivel. And you want to set the depth of that 1.5 times the length of the stream. So again, you can use it as almost like a float rod. You can actually indicator fish, and you can cast upstream and let your indicator float down. And you want seamless floating, no drag on your indicator. So let's see if so let's talk about the same setup here. My little picture on the right, what we're going to do is add the strike indicator, 1.5 depths, the depth of the water. So again, you want to adjust that to make sure you're effectively fishing. The other thing is you're going to take your weight, and we took it off the tag line. We're going to now put it on the main line. Okay, you want kind of a vertical fishing type of methodology, right? So you've got your indicator, you've got your straight line, and then your fly. So you're really fishing a vertical fishing. It's a totally different presentation than nymphing. So again, giving a different presentation to a steelhead, giving it a different approach, sometimes that's what they want. They want an indicator. So be willing to switch, have them in your pack, try it. And again, here we really have everything all connected on one main line. We have no tag end. Okay, let's talk. So line and rod control is very essential on this. You've got to make sure that you are keeping effective management of the line. You don't want too much line out. If the indicator goes down and you need to strike, you want to effectively be able to fish it. So you're going to cast upstream, you're going to mend, you're going to lift your rod to get rid of the slack, and you're going to fish that with no drag on it. That float needs to float perfectly dragless as it goes down the stream. No pulling on it, no skipping, no nothing. It's got to be effectively. And again, the reason is you're trying to make that nymph look like it's bouncing down the stream. You don't want any drag or pulling on it. So line control is very important. You want to make sure that if you do have slack, it's in your left hand. For those of you that know how to stack mend, it's really throwing the line out. You mend your line. Stack mending would be you'd mend, and you're feeding line out as you're mending. So again, some of you have done the stack mending before. If you're on a boat, sometimes you'll cast and stack mend to keep your line and your everything in line. Like I said, for nymphing, you can use with indicator fishing, you use the same flies as nymphing, egg patterns, any type of trout style nymphs. You can also do a jig if you have some jig heads, you can tie some bunny strips on that and make that move. And again, sometimes if it's dirty water or turbulent water, sometimes a jig head with bunny, like tie a fly off it with a bunny strips can definitely look like flesh rolling down the salmon flesh rolling down the stream. So you can use different colors, white or like a pink or salmon flesh color for bunny strips. Those are effective too. I mean, they're, you know, some people don't want to fish with jigs, but you can tie a bunny strip on that and it's very effective. So steelhead loves eggs, but they also love salmon flesh. When the salmon come in and they die and the carcasses are there and they're in the water, eventually that deteriorates and it floats downstream and it's like steelhead candy. So the more salmon, I know you go there and you may see salmon, you're like, ugh, there's salmon on the side of the stream. All that says to me is, ooh, the steelhead are going to be happy and they're going to be there. So it's a good thing. That's not the slide though. Okay, so we did that one. We did that one. Okay, so yep, let's talk through this. So I thought I'd throw some porn in here. There's Lindsay with a steelhead. That was Salmon River, and then Dave's got a beauty there. I mean, these fish are just gorgeous. These, we call them chromers, and you can see the one on the right's a female. She's definitely chromed up. So when they first come in from the lake, they'll be more of a chrome color. And then as they get into later in the season, they get their spawning colors. The males get really pretty cheeks and the girls get pink also.
Got a question for you. I see you have a glove on. I watch different Zooms and some people don't believe in the glove, handling glove or landing glove, and some people do. So what's your final thoughts?
Well, I think, you know, we all want the steelhead to be healthy, but I'll tell you, you know, you can say try to pick them up and without a glove, but those steelhead, that tail, a lot of times you end up dropping them or, you know, just to effectively handle them, I use a glove. I use a glove. I don't want to drop them. And so that's how we use them. I know folks are worried about that. I mean, I've been using them and I've never had a problem. You know, I don't use the glove underneath by the head. Okay, so is this where we are? Okay.
We're good.
Oh, we got to back up one.
Yeah.
Okay, so the last, so we need to, okay, did we go back? Because that's continued, so there's one before it. Yeah, so we can't get there.
Not updating on your screen.
Yeah, okay, so I guess I'll leave just see.
Here.
Yeah, did we try it? Okay, there you go.
There.
Presenting. That didn't update here.
Okay.
Oh, there you go. Well, it's continued. Okay. Presenting a streamer. Okay, well, let's see. I can just talk to it. So when you're presenting a streamer, again, a streamer is, like I said, the Lady Hope, you're trying to present it. It's like a bait fish swimming, and depending on the currents and things, you really want to try to fish a streamer. You cast directly out and you're fishing it down, letting it swing. You want to make sure that the speed, the hydraulics, and the speed of your streamer when you're walking is at a walking speed again. So if I'm walking, you know, if you look at a typical walking speed, I'm walking here for the people on Zoom. You want to make sure that your streamer is fishing at that same speed, you know, at a walking speed. You want to make sure that in colder water, the steelhead will hold up in slower pools, and you swing your presentation. You want to make sure that you're giving it time to sink, and that and if it's really slow, you can actually strip your streamer, which is really holding the rod and actually pulling on the line and actually doing a stripping motion, which allows that streamer to move. So if you're in some slower area, don't be afraid to walk into some pools and things, cast down and actually do the stripping motion just to strip a streamer to get that thing to move, okay? So it's similar to if you ever do saltwater fishing or anything for albies or false albacore or for striped bass, you can do the same sort of thing where you cast it and then strip that streamer in those pools. Sometimes the steelhead will see that and come get it. So as you can see, steelhead are very active fish. We catch steelhead swinging throughout the entire season, even in the dead of winter. So when the rivers get below 40 degrees, the steelhead's metabolism slow down. So right around now, this time of year, we're talking about some pretty cold water. If I was heading to the Salmon River, I would definitely be adding some sink tips and trying to get down lower in the water column as the fish are down lower. You can use weighted flies. You need to get the fish now when it's colder, you have to get the fly right in front of them. They're not going to move as far or chase as far a streamer as they would in above 40 degrees. You can look at the time and temperature for the day to see, okay, at 2 o'clock, it's going to be 35 or 40. Definitely would be more effective for getting a steelhead to hit because they're going to be more active. It's going to be warmer. They'll move farther to your fly. Okay, so let's see what we get now. So do we?
Move, but it
Yeah,
didn't.
I don't know if it's.
It's not updating on your side.
Yeah, it's almost like every other slide.
Yeah. You have it on the every other slide. Don't send mode.
But do we have to? Can we be in this mode like this?
Will it
No.
work in this mode?
No, it's got to be in presentation.
Unless you.
That's all right. We'll just keep working through it. We got it covered. Okay. Again, I apologize technically. So I touched on this before. You got to be on the move. Okay. If you're going to go steelhead fishing, you're not going to stand in one place. Steelhead swim, as you can see, 15,000 miles in a year in open water in the Great Lakes. Even when they're in the rivers and streams, they're going to be moving. They're going to be moving up and down, and based on hydraulics, water flow, what's going on. Steelhead move. So you're going to need to be moving to find them. If, like I said, if you're in a location, there's no fish, you don't see them rolling, they haven't been caught, you put some time in. You tried a couple different methods, nymphing, swinging, indicator fishing. Okay, time to move on. Okay, and not that the fly isn't an attractor, but you can try blacks and whites and pinks and some different things. I would move on. They're not going to play. We're looking for a player, and there's nobody there that wants to play. Doesn't mean there's not fish there. They're just not playing. You can come back after it warms up a little, swing that same pool, same flies, same setup. They're on. So sometimes you can't predict what the steelhead want to do. So again, you need to move. And you're hunting. Steelhead fishing is steelhead hunting. Okay. Dave and I walk.
For your streamers, do you have a color sequence you go through in the day? You start out white, black, whatever.
Right around now, I probably do black and purple. I think the darker flies are better if there's darker, if there's dirtier water. But chartreuse, like if it's really muddy and the turbidity's difficult, I sometimes put the Lady Hope on or chartreuse fly, put some color in it. If it's closer to the salmon's flesh season, I'll use a flesh fly, a pinkish or more of a salmon color fly with orange in it. And then once they're in the rivers for a longer period of time, they start eating more natural things. They're going to eat gobies. They're going to start eating local natural habitat and features. So, as they're in there longer, stone flies in the goby pattern. Dave and I tie a, like more of a green type of color. You start to mimic the gobies that are in there. You want to use some more natural things later in the year, later into the season, into January, February. White is a really good fly right around now. I like white. And, egg patterns are real good in the fall too, because you got a lot of eggs in the river. So As you get into the spawning seasons, when we talk about steelhead spawning, it starts in, February through March, April timeframe. There'll be some eggs in the stream. There'll also be, you get some of the other fish are spawning then too. And so you've got some eggs there. Then I'll start to use eggs again, part of the time. So clearer water, you probably lighter flies and smaller flies. And when you're darker water, you want some blacks, purples, depending on the time of year, gobies later on. So let's see what we got now. Okay, so before you head out, I don't know what to work. Some of the things you need to consider, and this isn't just steelhead fishing. This is good for anything, any kind of fishing, and again, you should look at the USGS flow rates. Some of the rivers have, especially the ones coming off of Lake Ontario, most of them have flow speed, flow rates, and turbidity and temperature. So you can, before you go heading out that morning, you definitely the night before, you want to check the flows and the turbidity. As you get to know different streams, you'll get to know what flow rates are. You get there and you go, wow, it's so high. And then you realize, okay, yeah, 1,000 CFS or 2,000 CFS might be too much for you. So again, checking some of these ahead of time, knowing the water temperature, like I said, less than 40 degrees steelhead, you've got to get that fly down and right in front of them. Air temperatures, when's the warmest time of the day, the time of year, and turbidity. So again, this is an example of one of the, flow discharge rates and turbidity. And there's me out there in the middle of winter. And, it's kind of like snow skiing. If the sun's out and there's no wind, I'm good. I don't care what temperature it is. But if there's wind or there is, rain and that type of thing, then I get cold. So you have to dress for it. So let's see what happens if it does this now. Okay, so here's some more great steelhead. There's a Lady Hope again. That's another one that I just want to show you that Lady Hope in. They like that. These are some of the different steelhead. You can see they get really in their spawning colors. This is really pretty male. This is, again, the females are called hens and the males are called bucks. And this is just such a great hobby that Dave and I both like. So any questions on that? Is there any questions in the chat? Okay.
Oh, so Vince Leonard's got a question. How do you decide whether you use a two-handed or single-handed rod?
By the size of the water. So again, I love two-hand fishing. So if I can two-hand fish, I use my two-hander. Believe it or not, you can two-hand a single-hand rod. Okay, I do it all the time. I can go to some smaller streams and I can just put my second hand here and I can two-hand on a single hand. There's no reason to prevent you from doing that. It depends on the water size. When I go to Oak Orchard, I don't like to bring my big spay. Dave likes to spay that. I like either a switch rod or a pretty heavy duty single hand. I have an 8-weight single hand. And believe it or not, I spay that single hand. I can cast all the way across Oak Orchard on my single hand. But what that allows me to do with a little bit shorter rod is it allows me to swing two-hand, and then I go upstream and it's a little bit narrower and I'm in a pool. Now I can indicator fish and I can bat and bounce and then I can swing there. So I guess it's what you're comfortable with. When I go up to the Salmon River, I try to two-hand whenever I can. That's a bigger water. So depending on the type of size of the water that you're fishing on. But two-hand fishing is really nice. It's a two-handed rod. You use two hands to cast, it's usually for bigger water. And but I use sink tips. I have my tips for my single hand too. I use sinking tips. My shorter ones, I have 7-foot and 10-foot tips for my shorter rods too. Other questions?
Yeah, spay fishing or swinging streamers versus fishing with egg patterns or nymphs, do you find one to be more effective than the other in terms of numbers of steelies?
I think egg patterns, when they're on an egg bite, it's probably the most effective, but I always try to swing my streamers first. And I like to catch them on the swing. The tug is the drug. It's really a good tug on the streamers. And but I'll also break down by the end of the day. If I haven't caught a steelhead, I'll put on my indicator or I'll put on my egg pattern and catch a fish. If you want numbers, I would say fishing with egg patterns is probably more effective. If you're in for the numbers, if you're in for the experience, catching a steelhead on the swing is amazing.
So we got a question coming from Christy Malaysia. Sorry if I'm mispronouncing your last name. Would your fly work in Minnesota?
I don't know. I'll send you one, Christy. I bet it would. Yeah, she can. Yeah. Well, Christy, PM me or message me on Facebook and we'll send you one over and you see if you can get it to work. It's fun.
We got a Facebook question. What are the weight restrictions for a split shot on the Salmon River?
Well, in the summer, the upper fly zone, there's no weight. I think it's after May 1st. There's no weight till September. So you have to know your regs. Again, I don't know if there's a limit. Dave probably knows the regs.
Not so much
It's the distance from the fly.
Your fly can be no more than 48 inches. It can be no more than 4 feet. You can't have your fly 4 feet away from your weight.
So Dave, I'm just going to repeat it so everybody can hear. So the fly, there's a limit on the distance between your fly and the weight. The weight on your line and the fly, it cannot be longer or distance longer than 48 inches. There isn't a weight restriction
In the
based on.
summertime, fishing in the fly zones, there's no added weight to your line or a weighted fly.
Right.
Those regulations are set up for Atlantic salmon fishing up there, where anybody that's Atlantic salmon fish realizes that Atlantic salmon will come to the surface from 10 or 12 feet down and take a fly. So they took all of the weight off of.
Yeah, so let me repeat that. So again, there's restrictions in the summer in the upper fly zone and lower fly zones in the Salmon River. No weight and no weight on the fly, no weight on your fly line. So again, that's a restriction for the Atlantic salmon.
May 1st to September.
Yep, May 1st to September 1st, there's restriction. No weight, only in the fly zones. Look at everybody's face. I get to see people. All right, well, I was going to go to the next section. I was going to move on. This is the next section. I don't know if you can get that back up. Okay. So Kirk asked if I could talk a little bit about the history of women in fly fishing in New York. Is that being shared? Okay. That's okay. I can see it from here if not. Hi, everybody. I can see everybody's face. It's great. See if they can get technology up and running. Beautiful. Okay, so it was fun for me to pull together some slides on this. Again, I knew a lot of this, but it was really rewarding today, or the past week I had to pull some of this together. This is a book plaque on the left, and it's from the Women's Fly Fishing Club out of New York City. They started their own club, and we'll talk a little bit about that, but that's kind of cute. And then the very first picture I had in New York State was Theodore Gordon had a girlfriend in 1895, and they don't know her name, but they didn't stay together, just so you know. But he was out fishing with her in the Catskills, and so that's a picture. She's got her hat on or something like that. And I think this is 1895. So
Great set of waders she
yeah,
has.
she has her skirt. Okay, so I had to start before we talk about women in New York. I had to touch on a few women here. The history of women, and the oldest recording is this nun, Dom Juliana Berners. And she was an outdoor sportsman. She, back in 1486, they had these emblems that say who they are. So she liked to hunt. And notice she has a creel basket fishing. She was a nun. Obviously, she's in her habit. She likes to read, and she must be wise because she's got an owl or there type of thing. But she published an article, The Treaty of Fishing with an Angle. An angle back then was a hook. She did some writings about fishing and some of her observations, which were the very first writings as an author. And she said, a merry occupation without care, anxiety, or trouble. That's what she said fishing was back then. The next really famous person here, Mary Orvis Marlborough, Marbury. Again, Orvis, we all know Orvis, she's the daughter of the founder of Orvis up in Vermont. And she's known for organizing flies into references. So what was happening, people were talking about trout patterns, and she would be boxing up and sending out these flies, and people go, well, that's not what I thought this fly was. I thought that this was something different. And so she decided to document and publish the flies so they can see them in a catalog. And of course, it takes a woman to get organized to do this. I love it. So again, she published in 1892 a template of all the possible trout flies, their names, and standardized things. And she was known to fish on the Beaver Kill in New York. So she fished the Catskill streams all the time. She was down there and sighted there. And I have a picture, I think, of her on the stream with the men. So she was very well known, and she was brought into the industry because of her dad and the Orvis name. Maria here, she was Queen Victoria's appointed rod and reel maker. This was in London. And so I thought that was pretty interesting that, we've got a rod maker that, she took over her husband's business in 1822 after he died. And so became, very famous for her rod making. So here's a picture. This was the one on the Beaver Kill back in the 1800s. There's Mary Orvis Mayberry. And it looks like another woman's with her, and then the guys, right? So, women were fishing in the Catskills area quite a bit. They weren't necessarily known as well, but they were in numbers in their skirts, obviously, but fishing with the guys. Another woman, Elizabeth Starring Benjamin, she became a commercial fly tyer in Ralston, PA in the 1800s. So again, you guys are kind of close to Pennsylvania, so I threw this in, even though it's not New York. But again, she noticed that a local tavern owner was very successful as a fisherman, and she watched him collect a lot of natural patterns, and she began tying natural pattern flies and realized that they're very effective. And then our Cornelia Fly Rod Crosby, she seems like she was a hoot. I would have, if I have one day to spend a day with somebody, this lady, I think I would like to talk to. She was a fishing guide in Maine in 1895, and she had extraordinary hunting and fishing skills. She learned them from the Indians as a young girl. They taught her a lot of the fishing techniques. And she's known as the first lady in fly fishing. I think of Joan Wolf as the first lady in fly fishing, but back in her day, she was the first guide to get their guide's license in Maine in March of 1897. She guided Teddy Roosevelt. She wrote a book. She wrote magazines and things, articles for the New York Globe, Boston, Chicago, called the Fly Rods Notebook. So she was published in a lot of the big magazines around fly fishing, and she appeared at the first annual Sportsman Show in Madison Square Garden in 1898. And so she actually took the Sportsman Show on the road and marketed fly fishing in Maine. So the picture at the Sportsman Show, she has a cabin, she has fly rods and stuff there. So she set up and was marketing, and she was really the first woman to start to do these sports shows. get into that. So I thought that was pretty interesting. Locally up near me in Mumford, New York, and Jesse Hollenbeck's going to come talk to you about Spring Creek in Owaka Creek. This is where Sarah McBride grew up. Okay, she was an amateur entomologist and a fly tyer from Mumford, New York, and she was studying the entomology on Spring Creek. And that's actually where the fish hatchery is, the Seth Green Fish Hatchery today. She was in that area. Her father owned a fly shop. And so she worked at the fly shop and became, a great angler. And she published a paper on aquatic insects in 1876. She was the first professional woman tyer in America, and she won a bronze medal in Philadelphia in 1876 for her fly. She traveled to England, Scotland, and Ireland to learn more about fly fishing. She came back and then opened a fly shop in New York City. And I think it was only open for a few years, and then she came back to Mumford, and then her fly shop that her dad and her owned is in the museum, the Genesee Country Museum.
Oh, really?
They actually have the shop there. I want to go see it. And I talked to a gentleman there because there's no pictures of her, and I said, how can we not have a picture of her, right? I mean, nobody has a picture. And he said that she moved away out west, and because all the census was done by men, and she wasn't married, she didn't get counted. So when they did census, then you had to be a household associated with a male, and they would count you as part of that household. Well, she was single, moved out west, and he said, we never heard from her. We don't know where she is, what happened to her. She passed away probably at some point. But anyways, that's Sarah McBride, and she's local. The other woman out of New York City, Julia Freeman Fairchild, she was the co-founder of the Women's Fly Fishers Club. And I believe we have to check with Sam if she was on here, whether there's a Juliana Fly Fishing Club, and there's some other ones down there. And I think they might have evolved into that club that's here, the Women's Fly Fishing Club. Back then, the Anglers Club in New York City was a men's only club, and a lot of the husbands would fly fish, and the wives and the daughters and things wanted to fly fish, but they couldn't be part of the men's club. So Julia started her own club, and I love it. So they were sitting on the porch one day on the Never Sink, and they decided, hey, we're going to start our own women's club. And it was really a compliment because they couldn't go fishing with the men and the men's club. So she started the first women's fly fishing club, and she was president for 47 years. She led women fly fishers. She was leading in conservation, and sounds like she was a pretty neat lady and a trailblazer in women's fly fishing. So again, we got here in 1946. Now we're in the more of the early 1900s. You've got Grace Vanderbilt. So very famous names. A lot of very famous, wealthy folks out of New York City would come up to the Catskills to fly fish, and obviously the women came with them. So again, we got Ed Hewitt here. He loved teaching women, and so she's a Vanderbilt, and she's fishing up on the Never Sink. And then here's in 1920 on the Beaver Kill. We've got, she's still got the hat, but at least we lost the skirts, while we're fishing. But again, this was Walt and Winnie Deddy had provided this picture. I'm not sure who the picture is, but again, it's an angler at the Junction Pool in the 1920s. So Catskill area was very famous. And here's, so here we talked about Julia Fairchild. I just wanted to give you a picture of some of the early ladies that started fly fishing in the 1930s. Here's the ladies out of New York City. Again, it was an instant success. Along the Catskill, all the water it wasn't public fishing. Every club, it was very private property, and every club would be a men's club. There was fishing on the Willowee by this club, and fishing on the Never Sink on this club, and the Beaver Kill, it was this men's club. So they had to actually get their own water so they could fish. And so they got private water at the home pool. And the upper Weemock was the very first place the women had their own water they can fish. And this group of ladies were the pioneers for us in the fly fishing club. So we can find, a lot of joy in these ladies. They got their pearls and their dresses on. They were labeled as a women's lib organization. They were really pushing the envelope, the fact that they have their own water and they're going fishing. They're like some women's lib thing that these girls are doing. And they were sometimes called the lady wanglers, not anglers, but wanglers. So I thought that was pretty cute too. So that would have been fun to fish with them down in the Catskills. So if we talk about, now where are we today? The Deddies, I don't know if you've been down to the Catskill, you've got the Catskill Museum, the Deddy Fly Shop. We've got Kelly and Joe Fox are descendants from the Deddies. This is Mary Deddy back when she was younger with her mom and dad, Walt and Winnie. This was at their home. And this is Mary just recently. She's at the Catskill Fly Fishing Museum from time to time. I took this picture of her and Agness Van Putt a couple years back when I told you I was on the board. So I got to meet some of these ladies. And, Mary is a fly tyer. She still ties the Catskills flies, and she's a doll. The stories about the Deddies are, you walk in the house and they hand you a beer, right? There's, you want a beer? You could be 8 o'clock in the morning. Want a beer? And I would I heard these stories. I actually walked into Mary Deddy's kitchen and it was like 10 in the morning. And I was over there for an event that I was going to speak at the Catskill Museum. And Mary came around the corner and she goes, "Hi." And I go, "I'm Lindsay." She goes, "You want a beer?" It's like, oh my gosh, the Deddy, this is like, that's how it happens at the Deddies. So it's true. I got offered a beer at the Deddy's kitchen. So yeah, so Walt and Winnie, they opened a fly shop right there in Roscoe, New York. And they were a full fly tying shop and gear for almost 50 years. And it's still there today. It was moved to, is it Livingston? Yeah, Livingston Manor, I think now. And Joe Fox, which is Mary Deddy's son, is now running the Deddy Fly Shop. Their grandson. Yeah, it's a grandson of Winnie and Walt. The other thing going on here is I put Agness in here. Agness Van Putt, she's 102. And her husband was very famous fly tyer, but she also was very famous. And she worked at the museum, and knew everybody. So if you wanted to find out who's who in Catskill fly fishing, Agness is there, and she is still volunteering there. I think she did finally retire at 102, but she's still there from time to time on weekends. So she's a real sweetheart too. Here on the left, the other family is Elsie Darby. So Elsie and Harry, they actually started Elsie started tying flies for the Deddies. And then her and Harry started their own fly shop, and she cataloged a pattern of over 232 flies, and they would tie them all. So Elsie became a very famous fly tyer. She hand tied a lot of these, and they had roosters. They raised these prize roosters in their yard for tying feathers, and they ended up sending this. So, I mean, I can't imagine being at their house. There must have been like cock-a-doodle-doo and all the roosters going on and stuff. It must have been crazy. Here on the right, this is Joan Wolf. For any of you that don't know, Joan is still very much a part of the American Museum of Fly Fishing and the Catskill Museum. She's very much out there. In any of the events, you can still go see her. She's active and out and about. I put her in here as 94, but I think she's like 96, but I wasn't sure. So if she figured out I said it wrong, she'd kill me. So I didn't know. I said 94 to be nice. But anyways, Joan started casting when she was very young. Her father was a member of the Anglers Club in New York City. And again, she wasn't allowed to go in there. She did, I think, a little bit. And then she started on these fly casting championships. At 17, she won a national and an international for distance casting, and you can see Joan, a lot of these pictures. She married a couple times, and her third marriage was to Lee Wolf. an all-American sportsman, and her and Lee bought property up on the Beaver Kill, and they actually opened a fly fishing school. She's authored a number of books. She got into women's fly fishing clothing to make it lighter and easier and flexible to actually wear. So she was really into making sure women have comfortable waders, and she's an advocate for clothing and women. This is a picture. I was excited. I got invited to cast on opening day with Joan and some other ladies, and it was wonderful to meet with her. And I served on the board down there. She has a fly fishing school. It's still open. She still attends and helps with casting. So I would say, look for the Wolf Fly Fishing School. I took advanced casting from her, and you can still do that. And I would say, if you can, sign up and go, because she's not going to be here forever. And you get to say, hey, I took a lesson. Even if she scolds you about your casting, don't worry about it. She's pretty funny. I was casting with her, and she slapped my hand and said, no, you've got to release. And she's like an old school teacher. She'll definitely let you know if you're doing it wrong. So she's a true gem to us here in New York State, and she's the first lady of fly fishing here in New York State, and we're glad to still have her. If I go to current day, there's lots and lots and lots of ladies here that are involved in fly fishing. It's really taken off, but I started with some of the guides that were here. Rachel Finn, if you want a badass, then Rachel, she swears, she smokes cigars. That's not me. Rachel is the badass in fly fishing. She is really from the Adirondacks, and she is the head guide at the Hungry Trout Resort. She is a gem, and she's a pleasure. She's a accomplished artist. She graduated from Yale University. She's won the 2018 American Museum of Fly Fishing Isaac Walton Award. And if you ever get a chance to go there up on in Wilmington, New York, she's a great guide and really a gem to have. Anita Colton, I think you had Anita, or you're going to have Anita here. She's a guide on the Delaware. She's young and energetic and capable, and rows that boat around, and she's very amazing down there. And if you don't know Anita, you can book a trip with her at any point through Cross Current Guide Service, and she's a sweetheart too. So she's around, and she's a licensed certified physical therapist assistant, and she also helps with the New Jersey casting for recovery, and Rachel helps with the upstate New York casting recovery with me. You heard about me. Dave and I have a fly fishing school called Oasis. That's a veteran school for wounded vets that we run out of Rochester. And I've been guiding for about 12, 13 years now, and just truly enjoy it. Sam was probably the first guide on the Delaware. I remember coming into fly fishing, and Sam had been here forever, so she kind of came before me. So I put her up here because if you guys are so lucky to have Sam as part of the FFI Eastern region, and she is a certified caster, amazing, guide. I think she might not be guiding as much anymore, but avid fisherman. And so you've got these are kind of the ladies today that I put up that I think everybody should know who they are.
So Lindsay, Sam Dekker is the president of Eastern Waters Council. She's been to several chapter events. As a matter of fact, she demonstrated fly tying about where you're sitting.
Good.
Right now.
Good.
So she's a familiar voice
Yep.
in this club.
Yes.
But if you're new to the club, maybe you haven't seen her around.
Yeah. So, I wanted to, there's many more, there's lots of other, Hyun is very busy, and there's lots of other ladies. I can't even name them all. If you go to the Salmon River, there's a fly shop owner, Melinda. Melinda's an avid caster, an amazing spay caster, and knows anything there is about spay. I could put Melinda in here because she's an owner of a shop, and she's had that shop for many years from her father. So there's a lot of women today, but I thought we're probably running out of time, so I thought I'd shorten it up. But hopefully that gave you, at least those of you that weren't aware. I mean, some of you have been around and know what's happening with fly fishing in New York State. We're lucky that a lot started here because of New York City. And there were a lot of women around too fishing, and that really were part of it. So hope you enjoyed that. That was good? Okay.
Do you have any questions for Lindsay on this?
No, so my advice is you can go to the Catskill Museum. American Museum of Fly Fishing too has a lot up there going on. I would encourage you to go by and fish a little bit, and maybe you can find some of the water that these ladies started this club at, and maybe find that hole where they fished and say, this is where it all started. And I think, if you get a chance, some of the events, there's the Catskills always the first weekend in August. They usually have an angler affair where they have an outdoor event where they have things going on, and Joan will generally show up to that and do some casting. Or if you can afford to go to her school, you should definitely take the chance to do it now while she's still here with us. She has a golf cart. She comes down, drives down with her golf cart, gets out, slaps you, tells you how to cast right, do it, and then she takes the rod, and so she's like amazing. Can cast really long. And has anybody ever taken her school? Has anybody here ever taken a class? No? Okay. Yeah, so I took an advanced casting class, and it was a dream. It was really fun to meet her. So I've recovered though. I've recovered from it. It was tough. It was really tough.
Can we switch to the camera? Yeah. Cool.
All right.
So let me stand over in the spot. Gonna go down. So I please join me in thanking Lindsay for presenting for us.
Thanks.
Two areas. If you had never steelhead fished, I hope that Lindsay's talk encourages you. These are incredible fish. However, I would just warn you, as Joe Cambridge is fond of saying, he'd recommend taking up crack than steelheading, because you're going to be out in that weather. Once you hook that fish,
yeah,
your winter will never be the same again. It is just an amazing fish, and when they're bright and pulling, the amazing fish.
Yep.
And also to introduce us to, it breaks my heart when people say, "Oh, women haven't been in fly fishing," and they'll make these naive statements that betray the history of our sport. Women have been embedded in our sport. I mean, maybe not the majority, but women have played a major role in innovating, documenting, and being a part of our sport from the very beginning. The very first book written on fly fishing was written by a woman. And so our area has a very rich history of women innovators in the sport. And it pains me when people don't understand that history. And so thank you for taking a moment and kind of beginning to introduce us to a very rich history in our area of women being some of the leaders in our sport. And for certain, Joan Wolf is what the leading voice in fly casting teaching, and has been for a very long time. So thank you.
Yep.
So I think we had around 14 on Facebook, and they were literally all over this country. We have people in Oregon.
Wow.
They were really chatting it up in the comments. You'll have to go back and check it out. And so it was kind of entertaining. It was fun to be on Facebook. And it's kind of a weird way to meet when we're actually a group of maybe 30 plus folks who are meeting in various ways. And so is kind of a different way to think about it. So with that, let me wish you a good evening. For those of you online, we're going to end the stream here soon. And for those of you who are here, you're welcome to socialize and hang around if you wish. And once again, thanks to Lindsay.
Thank you. My pleasure. It's a pleasure.
Make sure you return your glasses to the bar.
I'm sorry that wasn't moving right. I don't
Yeah,
know.
enjoy another beer.
I don't know what was going on. What that